became very good friends. And he's like a super free man.
Right.
But his point was, look, when all of the states around us built in all of these regulations,
Got up to the top,
they can't dispose of it,
you know, clear in some direction.
or Maine, and
Started clear down again.
there isn't a free
Start
market.
going again.
I mean,
Got to the- and then we got
Of course,
to
even if
the
you
inside.
even if you were advocating free market, the landscape
The wind flew off and then
is not a free market.
Those count.
And we are just
really
victims.
beautiful.
All right.
You could look out,
Amazing thing.
look out over the,
So,
the valley.
I hope back to
So where it starts.
Very
fundamental conservative policy.
Haskins not coming
Someone who
today.
actually cared about the job.
And right now, there was
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Environment and Agriculture. We will start our meeting by having Representative Minor lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So today we are back with a work session on Bill HB 396 relative to the processing of beef cows, swine, sheep, and goats at facilities not certified by the United States Department of Agriculture. And we had a work session last week, and Representative Comtois presented an amendment to that retained bill. And we had found some issues with it. And so Representative Comtois has graciously brought it back to OLS for redrafting and is presenting a clean new version for us to review this morning. So I would like to start off by Representative Comtois walking us through and explaining the changes that were made to the amendment and any other pertinent information she'd like to share with the rest of us this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the things that we discussed is that we didn't want the amenable species to include meat food products. So that has been stricken so that it basically deals with cuts of meat. And I worked with OLS and with Representative Bixby on making sure the language was in there correctly. We also caught some areas where they had forgotten to take out that amenable species were exempt from federal law. So we've corrected that in the labeling also so that it only states that it's exempt from state inspection.
Okay, and let me stop you right there. We are addressing Amendment 3090H.
That is correct.
Okay, thank
that
you.
came back to me.
And does everyone have a copy of it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that came
Proceed.
back. Thank you. That came back late yesterday afternoon. They did a first redraft on Friday. We looked at it over the weekend, and then they did another redraft on Monday before they went on the holiday. So, and then the other big thing is that we made sure that on page 3, item C was struck at Representative Bixby's request to strike September 1 to April 30th. And then as we go down further, they reinstated J, which is now, on page 3. They had struck that section, and we have had that reinstated. So I think those were the major changes, and Courtney over at OLS made sure that she made sure that amenable species and non-amenable species had two different labelings, because one is exempt from federal law and the other one is not exempt. And those were the big changes that we made, and to make sure that amenable species were only subject to cuts and not meat food products. So if
Okay.
anyone has questions.
Okay. We'll entertain any questions from the committee. Are there none? Are there comments?
I'd just like
Representative
to,
Bixby?
to make a quick comment, which is that I think that now that having gone over it carefully a couple of times to iron out things that we hadn't done quite right and then things that OLS hadn't done quite right, I think that this amendment is in very good shape. I still have reservations about the entire idea of it, but I'll talk about that when we get to executive session.
Okay, fine. Representative Comtois.
Thank you. And the other thing that was put in there at the request of Representative Bixby is a designated slaughter site that met sanitary conditions was put into this also as the amendment.
And clear labeling. And also, I know that you had put in a statement of registration that acknowledging that by not processing its own beef, cows, swine, sheep, or goats at a USDA facility, the farm is violating federal law and could be subject to federal prosecution. So, is that registration going to be filed with Department of Agriculture in New Hampshire?
Madam Chair, yes. And Commissioner Jasper last week said that he would not mind having that done because at one point we're going to take that out, but he suggested that it stay in.
Okay. Any?
I believe that DHHS has an.
Yeah, we'll have you make some comment. Just one moment. I think Representative Howard, you had a
Thank you, Madam
question or
Chair.
comment?
So are we saving our questions and comments for the executive session, or could we?
You can ask them now.
So-
I'd be happy to.
Okay, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
So I was pretty convinced by the passion with which the commissioner disagreed with this bill. And I especially have a problem with registering yourself as a criminal with that agency. So I'm wondering do you remember when we did the pesticide thing and we decided instead of banning it, we decided to educate people? The commissioner had mentioned that there are slow times and that if people organize themselves that they could fill those slow times and not need to slaughter, not have such a huge need for slaughter at home. And I wonder if we should take this opportunity to educate them rather than legislate them.
Good point. For my own opinion is that I haven't seen anything from New Hampshire Department of Agriculture to facilitate any movement between smaller producers to aggregate them in order to make these bookings, and I don't know that they want to. I know that the commissioner had mentioned that he thought it would be an appropriate thing for the New Hampshire Farm Bureau to be involved in. I don't know that they want to or they have the resources to. I mean, we can have Mr. Johnson make a few comments if he would like. But my opinion is that, this is clearly an intrastate effort. And I think if people are aware that this is something that, may not be in agreement with federal law, I mean, I think there's a really good case to be made that, well, the federal law shouldn't have any bearing on something that we're doing intrastate. And I believe that there are some folks who are interested in perhaps doing, a case and having it brought up. I mean, if there's a farmer who is passionate about this and willing to take take the risk. I see it's no different than, what we have considered with marijuana legislation. So with that, I'll let Representative Comtois make her comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand what Commissioner Jasper spoke about educating farmers. This has been a discussion that's going on for close to a decade. Farmers have come around and they are looking at a 12-month model, not just a once-a-year model, a lot of them. So that notion really is negated. That statement is that everything's all clumped up. That is not necessarily true, because we have the small farmers. They want to make sure they have their meat processed monthly so that their consumers are continually to come to them, because what we're looking at is trying to make farming a 12-month model when it comes to meat and not a 1-month deal. The other thing is what we also have to understand, and I've been getting word about, is USDA facilities are certified by the federal government. All that means is that you have a federal inspector on site for the slaughter of the animals. As I spoke about earlier in this committee, there was a USDA facility that had given freezer burn meat to their farmer. They took it back, they relabeled it, and gave it to another farm. And the only reason that farm found out about it is because someone peeled back the label and say, why are you reselling this to another farm? The other thing is at this USDA facility, and pictures were taken, was that they were cramming the meat in so tight that white mold was forming on their meat because of no air circulation. Farmers were losing 20 to 25% of their meat because they had to cut off the mold. It was shut down, as I spoke about. I've just gotten word that 2 people have brought in their animals to that facility. They sat there for 5 days and then they had to come take them back, and now they have nowhere to process. The other thing is that if you slaughter your animal on your farm in a sanitary way, which is legal if you sell half a cow or half a pig, but illegal if you sell meats, it is less stress on the animal. The meat is of much better quality because you don't have that stress. So we have to understand that we already have laws where you can sell a half a cow, quarter a pig, or whatever. You can process on farm, slaughter that animal on farm and take it, and the customer can take it to any custom meat shop they want and get cuts. But a farmer can't do the same because of USDA laws.
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we've spoke last session, but the first part of our meeting last year about people in New Hampshire only provide 7% of the people's food in New Hampshire. We got to make a change, and we got to do something. We got to do something, not necessarily drastic, but we got to make a change. We've talked about this time and time again. We sit here, spin our wheels. We got to move forward with this amendment. I agree with Representative Quantar on her proposal in her new amendment.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I would like to invite our folks from DHHS Food Safety Division to come up and give us their comments. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Colleen Smith. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Public Health Protection, and I'll let Erica.
And for the record, my name is Erica Davis. I'm the administrator of the Food Protection Section within the Division of Public Health.
So we did have an opportunity to view Representative Comtois' amendment. I think it has a few changes since we had looked at it over the weekend. I do want to point out a couple of things that for the committee's consideration. I do notice in the latest version of the amendment that September 1st to April 30th was struck. when we had the original legislation, which was to address bison meat only, there was very strong feelings about including those dates in there because those are such large animals, and because those are cooler months of the year that it for an animal of that size, the concern was if it was warm temperatures to get that into that cooler storage. So we did want to point that out, that there was reasons in the original legislation for that time period. I also wanted to note that on page 3, line 20, this only seems to address the bison, elk, and red deer, with documentation going to the processing facility. And then also, we did want to also let the committee know that DHHS does not have any oversight over custom exempt facilities. So we do not inspect. The only entity that is inspecting those facilities is USDA. So we do not have any licensing, any inspection over the USDA custom exempt facilities. So just wanted to make sure that was aware. And really, if this legislation was to pass, there is very little regulatory oversight as to what is happening on farm. Really, the only time that an inspection would be involved would be if there was a complaint, or if there was an foodborne outbreak associated with it. So really, all of the labeling, the slaughter conditions, that's all we're really relying on a farmer to follow the law in that instance.
Go ahead, Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Right now, do you have oversight over farmers who sell a half a cow or half a pig when they do the slaughter?
No, we do not. And that product's labeled not for resale, so it's very limited into who it's distributed to.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. One about the September to April. The reason that we changed that from the September to April to the having to go into cold storage within 12 hours was because we can't really depend on September being cold anymore. And whereas we can rely on refrigerated storage with a thermostat being cold. So I think that requiring the specific temperature is more effective than requiring the time of year. And the other thing is that on what you mentioned in terms of the report, in G, the report going to the, I guess old G, new F, and the following one, what we wanted to do is make sure that there is a separation between what is being allowed under this that is not consistent with USDA and what is consistent with USDA. So we have, I believe we have parallel language for the amenable species that if it gets, and then in terms of it being treated as a meat product as opposed to just cuts, that's something we would not allow with these. In other words, we won't allow ground meat with the amenable species, just the cuts.
So the cuts would all be done on farm?
The cuts would be done at a inspected processing facility, so at a custom facility. So basically, in order the slaughter happens at the farm, the carcass needs to go into cold storage as soon as is reasonably possible, and then it gets transported to a custom facility where it's cut up, and it can only be, the amenable animal can only be done as cuts, not as ground meat. And that, which reduces, I know that ground meat increases the level of risk significantly, so we wanted to avoid that.
Thank you. I was just trying to understand because it says there's a veterinarian report required in the new D, but that report wouldn't need to go, wouldn't need to go for swine, beef, cows, or goats or sheep.
Yeah, do you want to address that, Barbara?
Thank you. And I think there's some confusion here, and it's something I don't think that we caught. But to do an examination on an annual basis of a herd for a small farmer is just not feasible because they may only have 5 pigs or 10 cows. And I don't think that doing that on an annual basis, and I don't really think 5 pigs is considered a herd. So, and when we talk about herds, we're talking about bison, elk. They actually have herds. So,
Representative Minor.
And we speak about custom cut, and there was some concern at our last meeting from Commissioner Jasper about people jumping into the ring and trying to custom cut their own products. But if any of you have ever butchered an animal, it takes a lot of knowledge, it takes a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of time to learn. I don't think we're going to see a lot of people in the marketplace trying to sell stuff that they, for lack of a better term, hacked up and try to sell in a plastic bag. You just got to know your farmer. That's not going to happen.
Thank you. Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, for taking my question. Have there been any issues with non-amenable species that have had this exemption in the past that would make you think that extending this to the amenable species is going to be a problem?
So it's hard to make that comparison because there are a very small number that are doing the producers that are doing the non-amenable species currently. So this would open it up to a lot more farmers. There are very few that are raising currently the deer, elk, and bison.
May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Follow up, yep.
Thank you very much. With this amendment, though, I mean, number one, given the stipulation that someone would have to acknowledge it's a violation of federal law, and number two, the limitation on the number of animals that could be slaughtered per month per operator, doesn't that also really limit the number, probably dramatically limit the number of people who would take advantage of this?
I don't have those numbers of how many would plan to take advantage of it. But one thing I did want to add along those lines is we have talked about the farmer acknowledging the risk, but there's also a risk to retail stores and restaurants because they could also have product confiscated or embargoed that they purchased. So I do think that there should be consideration to those entities that they are also acknowledging that there's risk with taking this product.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments to DHHS? Seeing none, thank you for lending us your opinions on this. I would like to ask if Mr. Johnson from Farm Bureau would like to speak on this at all. If you would, you're certainly welcome to say a few words. Or none. Do you have a question? All right. We just want to, sure, we just, kind of want to give you the opportunity to weigh in.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate that. And for the record, Rob Johnson, Policy Director of the New Hampshire Farm Bureau. And my hesitancy to speak is that we did discuss this issue at our annual meeting this past week. And let me read. There was a policy that was proposed that read, we oppose state regulations that would allow uninspected meat to be sold at the retail level until the federal government lifts their prohibition on such sales. Mm-hmm. That was voted down.
Okay.
We haven't had discussion beyond that.
Okay.
So as far as this particular legislation goes, obviously we're supportive of something, but I need to circle back with our leaders and have a discussion.
Fair
as far
enough.
as the language that you have in front of you, I have one thing that stood out to me is that you say beef cows. Mm-hmm. Why not? I mean, there's steers, there's bulls, if you look at the livestock statutes, the definition of livestock, it's dairy and beef cattle. And for consistency purposes, you may want to use that language.
Okay, Representative Comtois, did you have any comment? No?
No,
Okay.
no, thank you.
All right. Perhaps our friends in the Senate, if they get to review this, they may make that distinction and further along. All right.
Right, thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity.
Yeah. Sure.
Bulls and colts.
Yeah, like foals and colts. Yeah. Sure, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Johnson, was that a double negative? So the thing that you voted on said, could you read that again? It
Sure.
sounds like by voting against it, it's a double negative, so you negated it, right?
What the vote was on was a statement that we oppose state regulations that would allow uninspected meat to be sold at the retail level until the federal government lifts their prohibitions on such sales.
And that was voted down.
That was voted down.
Okay, so you do not oppose.
Correct. We're
Sorry, thanks. I had a hard time following that. Thank you.
correct. And this is a change in what our policy has been and what was to 396. That's why I need to have more discussion with our leaders.
Now, I do believe the chair or head of Farm Bureau had brought our resolution to federal government at all. What happened with that when we did that resolution saying that we supported the Prime Act and wanted to see some movement from our federal delegation on supporting that? What happened with that?
Yeah, well, we as an organization have provided it to our federal delegation, and we've had discussions in particular with two offices. And I think I've testified to this before, but I really think there's a real learning curve on their end in understanding exactly what the issue does. And with so many other priorities that that's the biggest challenge I think we have. And also President Brady is in the process of, she's brought to American Farm Bureau as well, and is pursuing those.
And they're supportive of the Prime Act, do you know?
No.
Okay. Because, so I know that the Prime Act would allow small custom slaughter facilities to avoid major processors by selling cuts of meat directly to the consumers. And that's what the purpose of this would be. But because we know that this has been tied up in knots at the federal level and it doesn't seem to be any kind of relief in sight. And we do have constituents and farmers who have pretty much been begging us to do something. This is where this has come from. And seeing as it's an intrastate proposal, I see no problem with it at all. People will be aware that they're not USDA inspected, but by the same token, we know of USDA inspection facilities who have not been doing their job too well, and so there's no guarantee or assurance that when you buy USDA inspected meat that you're going to be getting something that's not tainted, and that's
All right.
kind of the issue.
Right. No, and just to kind of follow up with that, I think what at least some of our membership struggles with is that, we are a nation of laws. Sure. And whether we like the law or not, there's a process.
Sure.
And that's where we have preferred to go.
Sure.
But again, my folks have spoken on their end, but I just need some more clarity as far as providing you really more comment.
Well, I think, this.
We certainly, sorry to interrupt, I just want to say we certainly thank you for your attention and efforts to this, and it's very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments for Mr. Johnson? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming up and lending us your opinions. Yeah, so for me, yes, we're basically saying this is something that goes against USDA and our federal law, but we're not strangers to that as a legislature. We've done that with other pieces of legislation. And I think, for me, I'm very much in favor of this. I think as a legislature, we need to make a statement and say that this is something that really needs to be addressed. And I am very much ready to move forward with it. Representative Bixby.
Yeah, I think that we pretty much have gotten to the point of the discussion where everyone understands where they are on this, and maybe it's time to move into executive session.
Sure. I would like to take a few moments, maybe about 5 minutes to caucus with, if you would like to get together with your,
We actually caucused already, so
Oh, you
if,
did?
if you want us to, take a break in the hall
just
and like go
takes
get a
5
drink or
minutes
something, we can do that.
yeah, let me see where we are here. Thank you. And I would ask, members sitting in the seats, please to, go out in the hall just for about 5 minutes. Thank you. I believe so. Mhm. Yeah, are they coming?
I don't know. Did we tell them? I don't know where they are.
Representative Wheeler second it. If he's in favor.
Executive Department for Administration.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? Good. I've been on a few in my time. I call myself a utopian.
That's right. Pretty complicated.
Well, when it comes down to it, it's very clear.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to do the amendment or the bill? I'll do the bill, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to close out the work session for HB 396, and I would like to open up the exec session for HB 396, an act relative to the processing of beef cows, swine, sheep, and goats at facilities not certified by the United States Department of Agriculture. And I would like to entertain a motion. Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to approve Amendment 2025 3090H.
And do I hear a second?
I would like to second that.
Okay, Representative King seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that a lot of discussion has already been had, and I think just about everything that could be said has been said. But I think this is an important step for New Hampshire and for the citizens of New Hampshire to obtain food and know where their food is coming from and not having to second guess, to know the farmers. And that's a huge benefit for our citizens because knowing where your food comes from, you're making healthy choices.
Okay, any other comments? Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so I think that this amendment does a very good job of putting into place a lot of very good guidelines. I think that I still have reservations about the bill as a whole, but I think that the amendment is very strong and substantially improves the bill. So I will be voting in favor of the amendment. I will probably have a different opinion on the bill.
Okay, then. Representative Gruber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to say I really appreciate your efforts here in supporting our local farmers because I think farmers, our local small farmers in New Hampshire are critical for our state, both for our food and our culture and our economy. So I really support that. I do have some concerns, and my concerns are that this may not be the best step first at this time to support our local farmers. And this morning I picked up the book that was handed to us, which is the New Hampshire Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan from 2025. And I wanted to say, well, what do they say? So I did want to send out, give you a copy of that, which may be important now, but maybe for second steps moving forward. They have a number of recommendations on how we can support under slaughter and processing of amenable species. And I thought we should make certain, as the state did a incredible good job, I think, developing this plan, all the different areas we could help support our farmers in this area. And I just pointed a couple very quick. One is this, and I know the word funding is not a very popular word because we don't have the funds here, but funding a state inspection program mirroring Maine's and Vermont's and developing it as between these states to accommodate the cross-state sales. And there's a variety of other things, all trying to help support our local farmers so that they can actually support themselves, the state, and their families. The last thing I want to say is I'm concerned that this approach right now with politics are very heated up at the moment, which I don't like, but it could create liabilities for our farmers, which would not help our farmers. And I would think that an approach that we look on trying to create problems without getting farmers involved with the feds would be helpful. And I'm this is a little bit too far for me right now because I don't want to do something that would cause more harm than good for our local farmers. So in balancing, in wrapping it up, I think we need to think about how we effectively support our farmers and protect the public at the same time. And I think I've known many local farmers. They're very responsible people doing a good job, trying to make a living, trying to do a good job. However, there are a few, and our commissioner who came here last week indicated there are always a few like to cut a corner here and there. And if someone gets sick, and it may not be the meat, it may be they had this unsuspected meat and they think, well, I'll blame the meat. And bad publicity could hurt our farmers. So I'm very concerned that we don't create something that could have a backlash and actually have a negative impact on our farming community. So I have to hold back on support at this time, but I do think this as a committee needs to move forward on many other areas to support these farmers. Thank you.
All right. Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The concern that people are going to be getting sick on meat is certainly a real one. But again, as I've mentioned several times, and if you know your local farmer, if you know who you're buying from, that risk is mitigated. We have to do something. We have to move forward with something. We keep promising we're going to do, these farmers were going to do something, and we do nothing. We sit and spin our wheels. I think this is a step in the right direction.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as I said, in addressing some of the concerns, farmers, may get a bad rap. We went through this when we were passing the raw milk bill, that this was going to happen. Does some things happen? Yes, but for the most part, it's been a very successful program, and I think it's about almost a decade old now, that we are now allowing raw milk sales in New Hampshire, and very successful for the farms that are utilizing it. The other thing is doing USDA slaughter versus slaughter on the farm. We already allow slaughter on the farm. You just can't sell it as a cut of meat, but you can sell half a pig, half a cow, and take it to as long as it's already sold to a customer and bring it to any facility, and then they can cut it up. Why is the farmer exempted from that when we already allow it if they don't sell it in halves and wholes? So I think we really need to be looking at, and what this bill does is that we put in guidelines. We're also letting them know that it is against the federal law. It's at their own risk that they're doing that. We're not saying carte blanche, but farmers have to have an outlet, and making sure that we have a USDA facility or a USDA inspector is going to make that meat safe, as I just described at a USDA facility with white mold, freezer burn meat, reselling that at a USDA facility is already happening in New Hampshire. So just because it was USDA doesn't mean it's better or safer. So that's all I have to say.
I have a question for you. When a farmer brings his animal to a USDA facility, how do they know that the meat that they get back is that same animal?
They don't.
Thank you. Okay. Representative King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that I share Representative Gruber's concerns about meat safety. I think we all do. But, we have to always balance safety versus practicality. And I think there are many, many more people in the state that are suffering from sky high food prices right now, and anything that could help lower that would be beneficial. And then also, one of my concerns that I don't think gets talked about enough is just the fact that it's becoming increasingly difficult for the little guy to compete in the farming world. And I don't like the fact that big corporations, seems like the laws are always in favor of big corporations. The little guy gets pushed out. That's a real issue. So if this helps alleviate that issue, that's also a number one reason why I might vote for it. Thank you.
Yep. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the idea behind regulation is to lower risk or to keep an eye on risk, and of course there are exceptions, like as you mentioned. What I wonder is when a farmer takes their meat to a place and it comes back with white mold on it, who is liable? Is the slaughterhouse or the farmer? And if the farmer does it at his house, the liability falls firmly on him, right?
Okay. So white mold results from lack of air circulation in the freezer. What they do is they cut that off before they process it. So the farmer can lose 10 to 25% of the meat that they brought in. So it's not
Oh, it doesn't make it unsellable. It just makes it less.
correct.
Representative Leon.
Thank you,
And
Madam.
welcome to our committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for having me as a sub. And I want to thank this committee for the excellent work they've done on this bill. This amendment really presents something so that individual farmers who want to be able to sell these cuts of meat can sell them to individuals who really want to have access to locally raised meat on small farms. This isn't something that's going to be sitting on every store shelf. This isn't something that's just going to be ubiquitous. But for those people who want to have this option, when this bill passes, which I hope is this year, they'll be able to do this. I think that we should give that freedom to individuals to sell those cuts of meat. Especially to those individuals who can't afford a whole animal, a half animal, or a quarter animal, so that those individuals can do trade with people here in the state. And I thank you all for your work, and I hope we can make this happen this year, and then maybe the federal government will finally take some action on the Prime Act.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd like the clerk to call the roll on auto pass on Amendment 2025-3090H.
Vice Chairwoman Barber,
Yes.
Representative Comtois,
Yes.
Representative Kenny,
Yes.
clerk votes yes. Representative Minor,
Yes.
Representative Bixby,
Yes.
Representative Germana,
Yes.
Representative Howard,
Yes.
Representative Wheeler,
Yay.
Representative Gruber,
Nay.
the vote is 9 to
Mr.
1. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
And I also is not called.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I did miss 2. Representative Leon,
Yes.
Chairwoman Aaron.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. 11 to 1, motion passes. Sorry, I'm rusty.
Okay, you're forgiven. Okay, do I hear a motion for auto pass with amendment on HB 396? Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd like to make the motion that HB 396 pass with Amendment 2025-3090H.
Second.
Second by Representative Wheeler. Thank you. And any discussion? Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so as I kind of suggested, I like the amendment, but I have some problems with the bill as a whole. And what I like about the amendment is that it does about as much as you can do with something like this to clarify the guidelines and to mitigate the risks, and that it makes it so clear to anyone who is interested in doing this that they are stepping onto problematic territory. the key problem I have with it is that even though someone is going in wide open, eyes wide open to that problematic territory where they could get prosecuted by the federal government, if that happens, there is no recourse at the state level. The other thing I have, and perhaps a bigger problem I have with it, is that because it is illegal at the federal level, the farmers who are doing this cannot get the kind of help for their operations from the state level, so from the Department of Agriculture, from DHHS, from Cooperative Extension, that they would otherwise be able to, because those agencies would be putting themselves at risk by working with these farmers. So I don't like the level of risk that either the agencies are taking a level of risk for the entire state against the federal government, or they are not able to provide the assistance to the farmers. So that is, I think, my biggest issue with this. So beyond that, I think that I entirely understand that this is a real problem for New Hampshire farmers, that they can't get access to appropriate slaughter facilities and processing facilities the way things are set up right now with the USDA. I would really love to see the Prime Act pass. I would like to see the thing set up so that there is an easier way to do a state level program that doesn't have the starting 20 yards behind the starting line set up that the current way of doing it is set up for. So that basically disadvantages any state program relative to a federal program. I would really love to see a way of encouraging more people in the private sector to come forward and start meat processing facilities, because there really is more of a demand than there is a supply at this point. So I think that there are a number of problems that need to get resolved. I just don't think that this bill is the way that's going to do it.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Bixby, I appreciate all that you said, and I understand all of your concerns. We have been trying to do something for years. The Prime Act has been at the federal level for years. If we want to look about being against federal law, we can look at cannabis in different states. One state took it on, they did it, the federal government did not come in. This has to start somewhere. And if it has to start here in New Hampshire, then so be it. Mm-hmm. The only way the federal government wakes up is when states do something. And we need something done for the small farmer. Mm-hmm. And the House resolution, all the years that we've talked about USDA facilities and this, that, and the other thing, and numerous study committees that we've done, nothing has produced results to help the small farmer with amenable species. The time is now. There's already precedent that they allow states to go against federal law by allowing cannabis in all these other states to be sold when it's against the law federally. So, understanding everything that you've said, I do believe the time is now, and I think we owe it to our citizens and to our small farmers to get this done, to let more nutritious and local food on the plates of New Hampshire citizens.
I agree. Representative Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see the crux of this issue, as other people brought up, the lack of passage of the Prime Act on a federal level. And that comes from the power of the big agriculture industry on our federal Congress. And we have here in New Hampshire not as much of a stranglehold, that industry has not as much of a stranglehold on our legislature as it does the federal legislature. And, you know, in a nation built by farmers, you know, the land around us that we drive home in every day was farmed for hundreds of years. I mean, now it's all trees, but it was farmed for hundreds of years. The stone walls that we see on our drives home, those were sheep pastures. You know, the local farmer is the crux of the United States of America. And so in this moment where the local farmer is completely bottlenecked by a lack of slaughterhouses, which comes from an over-reliance on USDA facilities to make up for it's the idea of safety versus the actual safety of the meat. I mean, these USDA facilities with their fancy titles and their regulations and their authorization by the United States federal government are in some cases just as bad, if not worse, than some of the worst local farmers and their cutting of corners. When you have such an industrialized process like that, mistakes happen. Mistakes happen where the freezer burns, where the mold starts to grow, and where farmers lose their crop. And like you asked, Madam Chair, when you grow an animal, if you're growing your goat, your pig, your cow, and you give it to a facility, you would want to know where that meat went. Not just get some random cow meat that came from the freezer. You'd want the cow that you raised, the cow that you put time, money, love, and effort into making so that it could be slaughtered and then sold onto the marketplace to feed the community that you serve. So I recognize the fact that this is more of a legislative protest than anything else. But I also recognize that we're a confederation of states, and the federal government has to listen to the states which make it up. You know, the 50 contiguous states of this nation have autonomy on a certain level, and that is the crux of the country that we live in. And I think exercising our autonomy, that autonomy by passage or moving forward of this legislation, HB 369, is part of that, because these farmers deserve not just no bottleneck, but the ability to sell their meat to their local communities and their local farms. And we as consumers have the right to buy that local meat, knowing where it came from, knowing how it was slaughtered. And finally, to the point, as Representative Minor has brought up, that if a farm starts to cut these corners and starts to have problems and sicknesses coming from the meat that they're slaughtering, or if the same comes from a store, people will track that back as they have prior. You know, when a issue happens at a farm, you hear about it on Facebook, you hear about it on Twitter or whatever local social media is used, and people know. People know that that farmer is cutting corners, and that people know that that farmer is not someone who you'd want to buy the meat from because their facility is gross and they're not doing it correctly. But the majority of farmers have a connection with the community in which they live. And that's the difference between a farmer who's living in Peterborough, farming their animals, and a farmer who's living in the Great Plains of the United States, shipping their meat across the country to land in a store of, the Shaw's of that we all have here in our local towns. So I think it's important that we support local farmers and their effort to grow and raise their cattle and livestock in a way that is actually local, and slaughter it in a way that they can actually get done without having to schedule 5 years out for a USDA facility. So I recognize that this is a legislative protest. I recognize that it's got a hard hill to climb in the state Senate and with the executive branch, but I'm not going to change my position on what I believe to be a worthwhile protest based off of the prospect of another body of this legislature or the executive branch not approving the law. I believe that we are the body that represents most closely the people of this state, and the people and farmers of this state have asked us to clear this bottleneck, break up the agriculture stranglehold on the big agriculture facilities, stranglehold on our local processing, and actually move forward for local farms, local meat, and eating good feed. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Well said. Representative King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to address one of Representative Bixby's points. I agree that I think it would be really unfortunate if, let's say, we pass this bill and then some farmer in state is obeying state law, doesn't necessarily realize they're going afoul of the federal government, and then they get busted. That would be a drag. But I think what most often happens when these sorts of bills are passed is that there's already somebody lined up ready and willing to take on a lawsuit with the federal government. And oftentimes they're backed up by nonprofits or other lawyers who, have the funding to challenge the federal government. And this is largely a states' rights issue, and this happens about all sorts of things, abortion, guns, marijuana, you name it. And lots of times it's, if there's a bad law in the federal government, it's not always the case where the federal government then repeals the bad law. Lots of times what happens is that these bad laws get defeated in the court system. That's the checks and balances. So this bill allows us at the state level to finally challenge federal law without the state getting in the way. And this way it very well could come down to the fact that, federal law gets scrapped, not because the Congress scraps it, but because the federal bench does so. So this helps us to do that. And I think that, just to reiterate, it's not just going to be some hapless farmer who doesn't know runs afoul of federal law. It's going to be somebody who's well organized, who knows what they're doing, has the lawyers already backed up and the funding to do so. So,
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was reflecting this morning, and I think this being my third year on the committee, I think this is the bill that we've spent the longest time working on in my 3 years here. And I want to thank Representatives Comtois and Bixby for working really hard to get it into the shape that it's in. And I think that it's a really good example of how this committee works. And I think that's to the benefit of the folks we represent. So again, thank you both for all of the work that you have done on it. And I plan on voting in favor of it because I do believe it's important for us to make a statement on behalf of our farmers.
Thank you. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we talk about the parallel with marijuana, and also a little bit to Representative King's point, where does the buck stop? I just worry about the liability and the idea that the need for these kinds of facilities overtakes the need for regulation and also responsibility. Is there a correlation between being a farmer and being a butcher? If you raise the animal, are you qualified to butcher it? So I just, for me, it's a little bit scary putting farmers in that territory.
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I addressed that point that Representative Howard just made. It takes a long time to be able to be a good butcher, to learn the cuts and know how to actually primal out an animal. I don't think a lot of farmers are skilled at doing that, but it doesn't mean they can't be. It doesn't mean that they can't learn. But it will. There's a big learning curve here, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of people jumping on this at first. But it is going to happen. It's a ball that's going to keep on rolling.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think a lot of farmers are looking to butcher their own meat. They just want to be able to slaughter on farm and bring it to a non-USDA expected facility to be cut. Okay, I think that's what you're going to see with the majority of farmers. They're not set up for that. Like I said, we already allow the slaughter of animals on farm if you sell a half or a whole, just not for cuts. The other thing is what we have put in here so that we know who is doing it, is that if you're going to do it, you're going to register with the Department of Markets and Food. So they're going to have a listing of the farms that are saying we're going to sell our meat products and ignoring the federal law under this guidance. So we will have a list. If they're following this law and this RSA, we will know what farms are doing it. It's not just any farm. There are some guidelines and there are some safeties in here so that we know what's going on. And I think that's important. And the other thing is we exempted meat products, which I think was huge. Okay. but we just have to give the farmers and we have to give our citizens a choice of where they want to buy their food. You know, do you go to an organic farmer? Do you go here, or do you go to someone that went to a USDA facility that you know is not so good? Or do I go to, try and get my meat from somewhere that doesn't meet the USDA qualifications? And I'm going to opt for the non-USDA meat. So,
Representative Howard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So could I get one more
can.
clarification as a comfort to me? I'm thinking about this botulism outbreak that's affecting baby food right now. And that I just would hate for some sort of outbreak or something like that to happen as a result of a mistake that happens with the best of intentions.
Okay. Representative Leon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would actually highlight that botulism outbreak highlights that even with regulation, there's no perfect guarantee of safety. And so ultimately, we all do have some responsibility just to have our eyes open. But it highlights that there are problems even with regulation. So the idea of allowing farmers to sell cuts to individuals and allowing those individuals to purchase it will only put those who choose to do this at any potential increased risk. It will not increase the risk for anybody who doesn't choose to purchase these. And I believe that anybody who's doing this thinks that they're actually reducing their risk, if not keeping it equal. So while I respect the potential for food hazards, and I always look at those every day, I didn't stop eating salad when I was pregnant, despite the listeria risk. And there's always risk in life, but we need to also respect that these farms may not be able to stay open if they can't have innovative ways to make sure that they're meeting true consumer needs with their own needs.
Any other questions? Representative
thank you,
comment.
Madam Chair. And another thing is the meat will be labeled that it's from a non. Right now, if you purchase meat, a half a cow, you get that slaughtered on the farm. The farmer then brings it to the meat shop or wherever the butcher that they're going to have it cut up at. That product is then labeled not for sale. Okay? The only difference is instead of saying not for sale on that, it's going to say this is against federal law, basically. It's going to be on the label. So people are going to be aware that's what's happening. And most people that are buying from the farm or a restaurant that's buying from a farmer, they know their farmer. It's in the farming community in New Hampshire is so small that if someone sells a bad product, that farm is basically going to go out of business. And it's going to happen once. And it's going to be, it's going to be blasted. And farmers actually police each other, believe it or not, because they don't want a bad name. So you already have a community that's looking out for each other. And I think that's really important to note, because when we're in the grocery store buying USDA inspected meat, we have the USDA telling us, the federal government telling us that everything is safe. But in New Hampshire, we'll have the farmers looking at each other saying, don't screw this up for me. I want this. I want to be able to sell my meat, and it's important. And they're going to police themselves.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, I think that we've covered the ground pretty thoroughly now.
Yep.
I think that it might be time to put it to a vote.
Sure.
And I think we're probably going to know, we have a sense of what the final outcome is. So.
Okay. All right, then. I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll on OTPA for HB 396 with Amendment 2025-3090H.
Vice Chairwoman Barber,
Yes.
Representative Comtois,
Yes.
Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Leon.
Yes.
Representative Minor.
Yes.
Representative Bixby.
No.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Howard. Representative Wheeler,
Yay.
Representative Gruber,
No.
and Chairwoman Aaron.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Okay, that would be 9-3. Motion passes.
All right then. And I would suspect that that's not something that could be on consent.
No, and I'll do a minority
Okay,
report.
so you will write the minority report, and Barbara, I'm sorry, Representative Comtois will do the majority report. Thank you very much. So the exec session for amendment HB 396 is closed, and I want to thank the committee for very thorough and enlightening conversation and a debate on this bill. Very important bill. And I guess our business is concluded for this year with this retained bill. And we'll see you next year when we have a whole load of new stuff coming our way. Any other comments for we don't have any events or anything coming up that we know of, farm visits or anything? No. No, huh? Just veto day. Okay, so we'll see you all on veto day and this retained bill. Huh? I do not. I have been reluctant to look, but I know we're going to see a lot of repeat stuff. So anyway, good enough.
We get a year off from Khaki Day.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks again for everybody for all your work. Much appreciated. We've got a great committee here.